a foggy day here at Denton, Texas, specifically from North Texas, the North Texas area. So once again, welcome and good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Jorge Figueroa, Flores Vice Provost for Curriculum and Strategic Initiative at Texas University, Texas Women's University. And we're very excited to have this first of the second panel series of the two panel series titled the future of education and ChatGPT's role in it. Today, our topic is ChatGPT, a window into the potential AI-powered learning, and we're thrilled to have a distinguished group of panelists with us today who bring a great wealth of knowledge and experience in the field of ChatGPT and AI. So over the next hour, we'll be exploring the latest advancements along with exciting possibility and the ethical and societal implications that ChatGPT and AI are bringing. So our panelists, our dream team of panelists include Dr. Adam Fain, who's the Vice President for Digital Strategy and Innovation and Chief Digital Officer, and our neighbor at University of North Texas. Welcome, bienvenido. Also, we have Dr. Rudy Thompson, Assistant Vice President for Digital Strategy and Innovation and Executive Director for the Center for Learning, Experimentation, and Applicational Research at UNT as well. Welcome. And last but not least, we have Charles Misha. He's the Chief Information Security Officer at Fayetteville State University in North Carolina. Welcome, Charlie. Thank you for saying yes to this invitation. And of course, this panel and this series won't be, possible without the support of the Office of the Vice Provost of Curriculum and Strategic Initiative, the Office of Faculty of the Vice Provost of Faculty Success, and the Office for the Teaching and Learning with Technology that Dr. Linda Murphy leads. All right, so we'll be, we encourage our audience to participate and ask questions via the Q&A throughout the discussion, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts and ideas. Also, I encourage you to engage in the conversation during it as well. And once again, thank you for joining us, and let's get started. All right, so the first question here, and any one of you all can answer it. So what is ChatGPT and how does it work? We've seen like a lot of things going on recently through the media, through the internet, and going around. But what is really ChatGPT and how does it work? Anyone can jump in. Charlie, if you want to jump in. Yeah.
Sure. I'll start with a very high-level view that I read. I did not come up with this. I didn't invent this, but it's machine learning. And the way it was described in the article that I read that I really enjoyed was envision two desert islands. And there's a telegram wire that runs between the desert islands. There's a person on each desert island that's been stranded, and they begin communicating back and forth, sending each other messages. And somewhere along the line, a super smart octopus under the ocean in between those islands discovers a third telegram button. And it begins listening, right? And it's quiet for a while, and it doesn't say anything, and it just takes in what's going back and forth, and it sort of learns how these two individuals communicate. And then over time, it's able to actually create sentences when it gets bored and send them to one, and it's believable enough to the recipient that that the desert island occupant thinks it's talking to the other desert island occupant. So that's a super high level non-technical view of it. A slightly more technical view would be that it's machine learning based chat that can do a lot more than just chat.
If our friend from UNT would like to talk a little bit more about it as well.
I thought that was a great analogy. Essentially, that's exactly what it does, and so neural networks, right, are just a whole bunch of connected islands, as Charlie just described. So the more we train it, the better it gets.
And how this system differs from other chatbots and virtual assistants?
Well, I'll just speak in my experience. If it's a non-machine learning or non-AI based bot, or then it's just kind of like a super FAQ. It can just pull text off of what you feed it, and that's the singular source of information. As opposed to this, it's it aggregates massive amounts of information from many different places. So it's going to be more accurate, more intelligent, if you will. That's fair.
That's fair.
Well, that's the other thing. So let's go straight to what drives us here today. That has to do with really concerns, about faculty, some staff as well, in regards to what we've been experiencing that has to do with potential AI-generated assignment submissions, responses, things like that are becoming more and more in regards to the concern. But also, I think that we can also talk as well, and in the other part on the views of what other specialists have suggested on how, it's time for instructors also to start shifting their teaching with AI in mind and to seeing opportunities in here as well. So basically, how can ChatGPT be used, to improve the learning experience of students?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I want to harken back just a second to something that I heard a couple of days ago at a conference we were at, South by Southwest, and somebody said, remember when Google search came out, right? And everybody was like, oh, but they're just going to Google it and find the information, and what are we going to do? And then they're not going to learn. Because they're just going to, students are not going to learn because they're just going to Google it. This isn't that dissimilar. It's just more advanced, obviously, because it can write a whole paper. But it's always a balance, right? There'll be tools that catch it, and then there'll be tools that bypass it, and then there'll be tools that catch it, and then there'll be tools that bypass it. So I think the best thing, just like what came out after Google search, was how to Google appropriately, right? How to use it in the best way for learning. And that's what will happen with AI, and especially with bots like ChatGPT. If you look at ChatGPT right now and you ask it to write something for you, it's still going to do it the easiest way, which means it's going to look for the most complete thing that it can in one source. Okay, it's not going to try to pick pieces from 18 different sources and put it together. It's going to be the most efficient. And so it's pretty easy to detect, because when you run it through a plagiarism tool, it's going to come back 100% plagiarized. The other thing that it can't do just yet is it doesn't have accurate citations. So you can tell it you want citations, but they're made up. If you look at the citation and you try to Google search it, they're not accurate. They're just made up citations. But we all know that it's going to get smarter, right? And so that's going to evolve.
And version 4.0 will have appropriate citations, or at least a lot better, non-fabricated.
Right. So I think we have to continue to balance it with how do we teach students to use it appropriately? How do we get them to brainstorm with it, use it to test things? How do we use it to show them how to write rough drafts, things like that?
So basically, how can we balance that piece of plagiarism right now? Because that's really what panics a lot of people, specifically in our academia world that we've been engaging with. You always hear the specific part of plagiarism. Oh, plagiarism. Oh my goodness. How at this moment in time can we balance that and see it as a potential tool? Just like you mentioned, you were mentioning of Google, but let's just come a little bit more into it. Like specifically when the Web 2.0 show up, everybody was demonizing the Web 2.0 as well. I remember that. And of course, everybody had demonized as well the use of immersive technologies, specifically AR, VR. How is this going to do that? And then we are all embedded in this. So how can we balance that piece that really is making a little bit of I would say, uncomfortable, the process of adopting these technologies?
For me personally, it's to not shut the door on it. Right? Because if you say it's forbidden, first of all, students are going to find their way around it. So somehow incorporate it, but teach them how to use it appropriately. Teach them what it means, what academic integrity means. What does it mean to use a tool like this? I also think it was pretty funny. You can iterate with ChatGPT. So you can have it write something and then you can ask it to do it in a different voice. And then you can ask it to be more emotional. And then by the time you do all of that, you've probably spent 3 or 4 hours. You might as well have just written the paper because you've invested the amount of time. So I think there will be some learning curve from students too, that they're going to see it really isn't as much of a time saving as they think it's going to be. So in my opinion, it is not to just ban it, but it is to incorporate it, talk about it, discuss it in the relationship to where we are in society today, the positives, the negatives, and where we go from here.
Charlie, any opinion on this?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. If you're constantly stuck in a cycle of trying to build a better mousetrap, you're just going to be in that forever. And the students will find a way around it. There will be other tools. We're talking about ChatGPT right now, like as a branded product, but really we're talking about a much bigger issue here. And as that matures, there's always going to be a way around it. Something interesting that I found was false positives are just as dangerous when trying to look for plagiarism. A journalist wrote a piece very recently about how they were submitting older pieces that they had written that they knew were not, AI generated at all, but the AI powered detection tool that was like, oh, this was made using ChatGPT, and it attributed, reason why was like the perfect grammar that basic spell checking and grammar checks had implemented. So it's this weird kind of like, that's not the way to do it. I think teaching students the value of developing their own voice, that's certainly something that I do with my students, where I'm like, it's important to have your own voice. Don't just repeat, best practices, because I work in the information security space. Don't just repeat best practices, repeat how they're applicable to your audience in your voice, and it'll land a lot better and it'll serve you better in the long run. And I think that goes back to the point that was made earlier about like teaching students how to use this appropriately should be the mission, not banning.
Yeah, I think a great value, Jorge, in this is the ability for it at present to remove repeatable tasks, really rote things that our staff work on in generating basic code, for example, and starting a letter of recommendation that you might write 30 of those a month. And often there's some cut and paste involved in that, and then you're plugging in the unique features of the person you're promoting, and so. But right now there still needs to be quite a bit of human discernment in that. So I think there are ways we can use it to improve, to practice, but it is not currently ready to replace you writing a 15-page paper on a very unique topic, for all the reasons that Rudy and Charlie mentioned already. But it will get better. And so we need to right now be thinking about, what our response is. We are testing it here at University of North Texas. We're experimenting with it, whether it's code or with mathematics or music or writing. We're plugging away and looking at what it's doing well and what it's not, and what the future might bring. That's our job as educators, to be able to get out in front of this and to understand the best practices and ways we can innovate with it, but also understanding the importance of detection and training our faculty, staff, and students to use it in the right way.
And I did want to share with everyone too, one of the panelists who's in Washington, D.C. said this is the first time ever that technology folks are coming to them saying, we want boundaries. That's never happened before, but with this particular technology, you could see how really false information could be generated as written
Truth.
information as truth. And so they're actually asking for laws to be passed and boundaries to be placed on AI generated material to ensure that the information is accurate or that you can tell the difference. And so I thought that was really interesting too. Never before in the history, he said, in DC have technology companies come to them asking for regulations.
Oh, well, that's very, whoa, that's something to be already seeing as well.
Right.
How is this transcending? I want to go already to the Q&A. We got a question here by our audience. The question is, do you think ChatGPT will eventually be able to only search and use sources that you pick, such as academic sources?
Certainly think that's possible. I've seen that talked about. There'll be ways, I think, to segment intentionally. There are so many products that will be built off of the open AI. We already see that for a particular audience. So I think that's part of the way we'll see it get smarter, better, however you want to say. So there'll be opportunities to search all the information, all the learnings, or maybe segment for specific purposes.
I'd agree with that. We've already seen in the cybersecurity side of things where output sanitation has been put in place by developers because it was really easy to crank out some malware. It was only able to generate things that existed. It wasn't creating novel malware, but you were able to say, hey, give me a Trojan, and it would give you a Trojan. Or like, hey, give me a keylogger, and it would give you a keylogger. So they had to put some output sanitation on it and be like, okay, well, we can't put this out. So it stands to reason for me that developers would very easily be able to implement something that says, hey, I want to put this in that tells you that I want that out and get that slightly higher academic integrity.
So there are things that I've seen how recently on how this had evolution in regards to specifically ChatGPT and how their webpage have changed. They just added a button who shows their pro where you have to pay. So that brings us the conversation about the traditional digital divide. Who are going to be able to access this technology at some point? Who will be able not to access this technology? Is this technology accessible for all? Or do we also have to start thinking about, hey, you know what? We should also make the call that if this technology is going to be available, it's not only for few, but it should be for everyone as well, because already you see that over there. So I would like to hear your opinions in regards to that as well.
I think the good news in some ways is that it is open source. So there can always be versions that are available. Now, the large tech companies didn't waste any time. Days after this really exploded, Microsoft integrating it into Bing, Google having their own product, not to be outdone, I think announced something the following day, and it will go on down the list. You'll see this with Amazon and Apple and others. And so, but I think that's really important, Jorge, that we consider accessibility. So it's not priced out of use for our low SES students, for example, and that there's not another technology gap creating students who know very well how to work with artificial intelligence in their learnings, teaching and learnings, but also and then others who cannot or first get exposed to it in college, for example. We already have plenty of those challenges. We don't need to add to that. So the good thing is it's open source, I think. And then there's a great question in the chat too about a different kind of accessibility, if you will, accessibility for our students with disabilities. In this case, folks with communication disabilities. I absolutely think there's a bunch of potential there. We have We have a compliance and accessibility team here at the University of North Texas that focuses squarely on that. Everything that comes through our office goes through a review to ensure that all students with disabilities have an equitable experience in anything they're learning and receiving from the University of North Texas. We're particularly focused on the digital, but that's most things these days have those components. So absolutely something we're testing here as well. And I imagine there's going to be things that make it harder for students with certain disabilities, and things we can really we'll see as opportunities and gains. And we're going to that's exactly why we should press into this. We have to be taking these and seeing what we can get out of it to improve the teaching and learning for UNT students and faculty and staff.
I want to piggyback on that. My wife is a speech therapist, to share a personal note, and that topic is very near and dear to our hearts for a lot of reasons. We actually spend a lot of time at home talking about adaptive and augmentative or alternative communication devices and methods. And it's not there yet, obviously, but I think the promise in this specific accessibility area is amazing. And I think that it will make a huge difference in people's lives long term. But I do think also, to piggyback a little bit, I do think the horse has left the barn on the financial accessibility. I think there will always be some version available. So kind of did those in reverse order there. But yeah, I think accessibility is important. And I think that this will remain accessible, just based on the fact that it started as open source, and we see the gold rush, so to speak, by corporations. But that doesn't mean that the open source nature will go away. I mean, we still have Linux, right? So to use an example, that's, there's commercial builds of that. We also still can use it.
Rudy, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about this specifically in this aspect.
What I wanted to add was just to say, totally agree. Companies will package it, right? They will figure out a way to hone it for a particular subject, or it can do this, this, and this. But the fact that it was open source, they didn't sell out from the get-go, means that it will remain available. So I think that is a critical piece. And if we can continue to have technology come out first as open source, that's an advantage for all of us. So I'm very pleased with that. Second of all, we were just reading one of the statements, and they were saying, you asked a specific question of ChatGPT, and it came back with an untruth. You are absolutely correct. That's what it's going to do. It's going to give you a plausible answer, but it sounds good. And so one of the things that I wanted to say is the human interaction is still critical. This is not saying that ChatGPT is accurate. It is saying that ChatGPT sounds good. It sounds great. It sounds very legit. And that's the catch. So as educators, we have to take the time to go in and ground truth it, just like you would with any kind of scientific evidence, just like you would with anything else that we do. We can't assume that anybody who turns in a paper or turns in a product that it is just 100% theirs. And so that is one of the issues with ChatGPT. But give it another, as fast as it's moving, I'd say maybe 6 weeks, and try that very same query again, and you're going to get closer. The growth of this is just so fast.
No, it's going very fast. It's like going like at such a fast speed, and other companies, other moguls as well are getting interested into it and seeing, of course, the for-profit opportunities that you can engage with this.
Right.
If we go back to open source software, if we started thinking about that, well, we have seen how open source software also becomes the way for other companies to engage and make money out of it. If not, we all will be using open office,
That's right.
and things like that. But that's also the interesting piece. One of the things that you all, the three of you mentioned specifically, well, when we were talking a little bit about workforce development. And I want to go to workforce development specifically. Why? Because that's one area that really in the state of Texas we're promoting and we're supporting as institutions as well. I also understand that in the state of North Carolina is happening as well, just promoting that workforce development. How do you see, or what potential implications the three of you see of ChatGPT or this type of technology have for the future of education and workforce development specifically?
I think ChatGPT can help with some language barriers. It can help rewrite something so that it sounds better, or it sounds, maybe not necessarily better to in one particular context, but if you are trying to go into the job market, you could say, here's my resume. I want to be a business manager. Could you write this in a way that sounds more like a business manager? It does a pretty good job with stuff like that. So I think it can help in ways like that. It can help with some letter writing. So for workforce in that way, I think especially people that maybe don't have a bachelor's degree and they're trying to make entree into that middle level, right? They're trying to go to that next level. I think it can help with some of those entry skills to help them get in.
Yeah, I'll second that really quick. There was a New York Times article in January where a teacher actually said, I'm using this to give students feedback and it's providing insights that I wouldn't have thought of. And
That's right.
Beyond the academic, that also applies to workforce development. So sorry to cut you off. That was just.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Charlie. Jorge, there's not going to be an industry that this doesn't impact. I think it's already impacting as people trial how it can be used in the work that they do. You'll read a lot of articles now that there were certain aspects of automation that started to disrupt what we traditionally think of as blue-collar jobs, and that this will disrupt white-collar jobs. I don't particularly like those terms, but generally people will understand because and if there's been sites around for years, like there's actually a site called Will Robots Take My Job.com, and you can type in your profession and see how vulnerable it is to automation. I think this is part of that. How vulnerable is it to machine learning and AI? I was just looking at something about ChatGPT 4.0. Right now we're in 3.5, and the things, it's just going to be later this year, the types of training they're using to train the model, and the awareness that the accuracy is still not there. As our participant, one person said, "Look, it didn't give me an acceptable answer at all." That's pretty common now. It's a great observation. You're going to get mixed up. There's been just as many things I've typed in that I thought, "Wow, that's impressive." This poem that written in limerick style about the city of Chicago. So wow, the next thing you type in, like, wow, that wasn't even close at all. Yesterday, one of our staff members asked it, which Texas universities have programs in computer science? Boom, 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 10. And then tried to take it down the road a little more. Which of these are online? Boom, boom, boom. Took a little longer, 5. When we looked up, only 2 of the 5 were correct. So right now, there's got to be a lot of human intervention. You cannot just cut and paste and say, this is it. It reminds me a little bit of the early Wikipedia days. Yeah. And there's still certainly, Wikipedia is a wiki, you can go in there and you edit. There's definitely oversight, but it has become a little more of a certain source than it was at first. but it can't. I tell them, I've got 2 teenage boys. I tell them all the time, hey, you need to do some checks on that. You need to think about your sources. Think about your sources. It's maybe the most important thing we can teach the next generation is about sources. But yeah, ChatGPT is not there yet. But will it get? It's going to get better very quickly. Now, I don't know at what point it becomes just part of the fabric. But I don't, most people who study this on a daily basis think it's not going to be too long. So again, it's about how are we integrating this into our industries, into our professions? How can we use it for good things? It certainly can be used maliciously like anything else. But here, again, at UNT, we're thinking about all the ways it might be able to augment and enhance teaching and learning.
And it's good for brainstorming. It can really get some ideas flowing. If we do that quite a bit in our production team and our instructional design team. And so it can really get you thinking about some things that you hadn't thought of.
And you mentioned, specifically, Adam, you mentioned Wikipedia a second, and I went back to when we were starting with blogs, wikis, and podcasts. I remember that era of the Web 2.0. It was something incredible. We were transforming. I also remember when at some point we were just like adding generators. Do you remember the generators and putting all this cool stuff on MySpace? So suddenly, suddenly people were able to code. Person that was not a coder was like getting generation of a code, things like that. So it has evolution so much. So it brings me to the other question here. Like you talk about integration. So how can we integrate this type of technology to the existing educational technologies that we have, to the existing educational technology tools that we have right now?
I can highlight one that comes to mind. I mean, we're trying a few different things. I mean, almost immediately, of course, companies reached out and said, hey, you better have an AI detection tool in your toolbox. And because we work with Turnitin, like many universities. And so we want to make sure if faculty want a detection tool available, that we have that. But on a much more exciting side, we work with a company called Packback. Now, we've been working with them for a number of years. They have an AI-based discussion board. Discussion board is often cited by students as one of the weakest tools as part of the learning management system. We all know, we've probably all seen the joke that circulates every now and again on Twitter about the common discussion board, where one student posts 2 + 2 = 4, and the next person comes in behind and says, I love how you used the 2 with the 2 there. And it often doesn't tell you any new information. It's just almost like a participation grade. It's a great post, and then you get your check mark and you replied to a discussion. And so, but there's so many other ways to use that. So we started working with this company. I was at the University of Illinois before coming here there, and then brought it to University of North Texas. There's some amazing things, and the faculty love using this tool because it considers curiosity. It's taking the basics of the grading away from the faculty, but creating a digest that shows you the top 10 posts that generated the highest curiosity score. So when you're a faculty and you go back to your discussion section, you can say, hey, here are some things that really got you all thinking. Let's talk about those, rather than wasting your time looking through some of the posts that just said, like, great job with the 2 + 2 there, and won't incite any further conversation. Now they're taking generative AI and integrating into tools, both in short form writing and long form writing. And we think there's a lot of promise to that tool. So that's just one of the ways we think, Jorge, that we will see some real gains, especially maybe for high enrollment courses.
To add on to that, the way their AI works is before the post can be released, it's coached. And that's a really great piece of the tool that I think
Coached by AI.
Coached by AI. So it says, you're missing a citation here. This would be better if you included, some information on this. Or so before I have to look at it, so I use it in my contemporary biology course, before I have to look at it, it's already helping the student improve it. And that kind of thing is what we're also hoping for ChatGPT and other things, other AI, is to do that sort of first level and maybe even second level coaching of a student so that the educator gets further along. At my level, I shouldn't be doing the commas and the grammar and things like that.
Yeah.
Right. I should be looking at, their thought process and their higher order thinking skills, at least in my own mind. And so, we can use AI tools that can help us, but these higher order tools can actually coach the kids. It's not grading it. It's actually coaching them to improve their sentence structure and their writing before it gets to me.
Charlie, I don't know if you want to also comment on this aspect.
I have a real pie in the sky hope for where it's going to go. So one of the things that we're using, I'll take a step away from the academic side because I don't think there's much that I can contribute to that. But on the support side, as a university, we're trying to roll out a technology support chatbot that's AI driven. To take it a step further, and again, I understand that this is we are not there yet. To take it a step further into my little umbrella of the IT organization security, I would love it if a student could say, "Hey, I saw this anomalous activity on my account," or "Hey, I got locked out," and then you could automate the incident response process, using AI, where it says, "Okay, well, this is the username that submitted this. Great. Now I'm going to check where they logged in from. Now I'm going to check, what activity was that account conducting." And triage that student's experience to get them back to work if they're experiencing a lockout or some moment of anxiety or crisis around a security incident, and be able to give them a green light. They're like, "Hey, you're good. You get back to work." A human being will review this case when I send them the details. That for me would be sort of a non-academic but still supporting the student feature that I would love to see. But again, I understand it's not there.
That's a great example. I think the goal, in so many of these examples is to, again, there are things that machines can do faster. We may not have someone that can respond to a student that got locked out at 3 a.m. Probably our staff is sleeping at that time, and that's probably a good thing. But the student might be, I work better at night, and I'm really flowing on this philosophy paper, and all of a sudden I'm locked out. If we can train the model to be able to do some, two-step verification without us or whatever we have next, then that's great. That's a great example.
And I think it's going to continue happening. That integration between. I see it more evolutioning altogether in regards to the part that has to do with the immersive technologies piece as well. And all of them evolutioning and supporting each other. For example, maybe it also supports the blockchain movement as well. So there's so many opportunities as well. But then it comes to this piece, how can we also support professional development and the upskilling of our educators with this type of technology? That is basically my next question, because that's one of the areas that really then we have to engage with. There's so many questions that come into how I use this, how can I use it, what is the strategy, and not everybody is well versed in the use of technology into the classroom or opportunities on how to engage with students. There's also people that prefer to go into a traditional setting, into a traditional way. So how can this could be a way in which how this type of technology, specifically going to ChatGPT, support that professional development and upskilling for educators?
So that's one of the things we're digging into right now. And we even had a department reach out to us last week and said, can you come this week? And we said, we're not quite there yet. So we want to do our due diligence. We want to jump into the tools that do exist. We want to make sure that we get all of the research that does exist lined up, get a really solid white paper, and then begin to do some initial training with the understanding that this is going to change rapidly, but get some initial things going. So I think that's the only hard part, Jorge, is what we train today. We're going to have to retrain in by September.
Yeah.
You know, but there are some things that we can begin to do. I would say probably in April that we can get some initial things going. But I think that these are going to have to be smaller, knowing that it's going to continue to grow, and then often with the changes that will continue to take place.
Yeah. Yeah. Fortunately for us, because we enjoy, this is part of our job. So the answer to the question is we have to do it. That's, you know, whether, as you referenced before, we're talking about XR, AR, VR, we're doing research in that, or machine learning and AI, or, you know, different ways to use this as far as diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Our job is to stay ahead of this and help support our faculty, staff, and students in navigating it and hopefully using it to enhance teaching and learning, to enhance digital learning, to enhance, you know, higher education at large. And so we haven't really wasted any time. Fortunately for us, we even started a bit of work on this in the last couple of semesters. It's just really ramped up. And so the challenge to us is to, you know, be able to churn out things that are helpful and not, you know, let the moss grow too long, because by the time you put out a paper, if it takes 2 years, that it's going to be irrelevant. So we have to do enough, but not too much, and keep iterating on that.
I don't have much to add to that.
No, that's fine. That's good. I was just like basically seeing at that opportunity, because like we're talking about how fast things change. And for example, we can take the example of VR, for example. Like today we have a headset, tomorrow we have to get out and forget about that headset. You know,
That's right.
It's that, and then we invested in all this amount of money, and then okay, what we do next, because the headset is not usable anymore.
Yeah.
It's not even producing things like that. So what other factors should we engage in discussions in our institutions in regards to AI and the concept of ChatGPT specifically as a whole? Like what strategies as institutions should we start engaging in? Should we start in a more intentional collaboration between institutions just to, you know, have a direct approach toward this? Should we create a specific SWAT teams, you know, that are transdisciplinary and interinstitutional with other institutions when something like this happen, you know? So because this situation also give us the opportunity to rethink the power of collaboration between ourselves. We always have been like in silos in higher education sometimes, and we want to do our own thing. But this took us by surprise. So, you know, like this took us like by surprise. And I see this is a great opportunity for institutions in higher education to partner with and to create opportunities to respond rapidly, efficiently to situations like this that could create questions, could create like panic and things like that. I would like to hear your perceptions on that.
I just want to say for us here, I love the idea of the collaboration. We totally agree with the silos, but first we have to quell the fear. You know, a biologist here, we can't get anyone to learn when they're in fear. So first, what our first focus was is to get a tool that faculty can have in their hand that can catch the cheating, or at least give them the perception that they are able to catch the cheating. If I can get them past the fear, then we can open the doors for what good can it do. So, to me, opening that door to what else can it do, first, across universities, we have to settle the fear. I think one of the questions was, looking at how to regulate this stuff. And I do think that's also going to come into play. But you have seen that some universities have said ChatGPT will not be used at this university. They just went with fear alone. And so I think, you start there, you get people the tool that can settle them down, and then we begin to work together on the positive uses.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a need for regulation. As far as the question from the chat, met with I was talking to our CIO. I served as CIO for 18 months. It's kind of a bridge, and we have a new CIO, so we work together, Chief Digital Officer, Chief Information Officer. And there's two sides. We're working more on the front end on the uses and what's the future and what, academic integrity. Probably like you're saying, Charlie, he's thinking about, hey, we've got to have some regulation. You can't put personally identifiable information in the bot. We don't know then. It's early days. Like, what is that entity going to do with that data? That we have FERPA requirements that you just can't throw that up. So we're trying to get some. I don't know if it's going to be a policy or just suggested use again on what we should and should not do, not only from a teaching and learning standpoint, but an information security standpoint as well.
Yeah, so that is one of the things that I'm worried about. I'm like, man, what if people put stuff in there that they're not supposed to, and where does it go? And we don't have data agreements with the on the other end of the pipe that's receiving our information.
That's right. Yeah.
I do think it's important so that, that's my problem to worry about. I don't think that's the campus's problem to worry about, right? And I think we do need to quell that fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I think the way that we do that as a larger higher education community is through discussions like this, and being open about the risks and being open about the potential dangers versus potential benefits, and understand that it is a fluid conversation. The conversation that we would have 6 months from now is not the conversation that we're having today. And I don't know what that's going to look like because it is developing so rapidly. And in the interim, assuring your campus about basics, understand your data classification, understand what you're working with, treat it like you would any other software suite. Is there an agreement in place? You can still use it and be safe at the same time.
Yep.
That's excellent.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities for, hey, I mean, these webinars and panels, absolutely. We've got some great professional associations out there now. We'll be at UPCEA in DC in a couple of weeks. We were just down at South by Southwest EDU in Austin. There's ASU GSV, all kinds of conferences, OLC. This is a hot topic in outside, every industry, but certainly together as higher education staff, we are thinking through this. I think we are better together. We need to share our findings. We have a whole digital learning research center here that we pump out these findings, whether it's a referee journal or a white paper or just a post on LinkedIn. We try to share our findings. We have about 12 faculty fellows all over campus in a variety of departments that are, conducting research right alongside us. But sometimes it's just something like this. It's like, what Charlie's doing at his university is worth noting. What are we doing about that here? And what you're doing at TWU right across town is something we may not have thought about yet. So conversation is really important, and the willingness to share to better the industry is vital.
And I think to remember that education used to be the professor or educator had everything in their head, and then everything was in books, and then everything was online, and then this is just another tool. There will be bigger and better tools that come along that will scare us and excite us. And we can wrangle this in and make it do what we want it to do. It is a tool. So I don't think we need to run away scared. I do think we need to address what could be negative and make sure that we are aware of that. But I think it's an exciting time to look at what we can make it do for us.
And we can use it as an opportunity to do what really educational technology has done forever, serve
Right.
as a scaffold.
Yeah.
As a teaching and learning process, because this does not substitute the pedagogy. Pedagogy first, technology second. That's basic.
right.
100%, 100%.
Yeah, and that's the important part of work. So we can use it as a tool at some point in the classroom setting on how to motivate and engage students as well, and look for aspects. So I know that we are almost like a couple of minutes into finishing our conversation today, but I would like to hear your opinion on what will be your message to faculty that are today engaging with you all, and what will be your message for students who have joined us as well in regards to the use of ChatGPT and AI? What will be your message today specifically?
I think the message is this is a powerful tool, and we need to work together on figuring out again its best uses. I think we need to be wary of it as well. Again, right there at home, got the teenage boys are pretty excited about that. I'll just knock out a 3-page paper here, and we had that good discussion. The same thing with our students. That paper that you just think is quite good with fabricated resources is not. If you want to do it to get some ideas, to get the juices flowing, I think that's a great tool. I encourage them to use it. I don't think we run away from it, but we've got to understand its limitations too. And so what we've talked to our faculty about here at UNT is embracing it from a research perspective, understanding the limitations, not running away in fear, but also understanding how we can support our faculty in thinking this through. So yeah, that's how we're approaching it.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just another leap forward. There will be more tools that will come after. There were tools that came before, and it's our responsibility as humans and as educators to make the best of this tool. I do worry, Charlie, about, and I mention this to faculty often, there aren't any, IT security parameters around it. We don't have any policies on student data. And so we're not advocating its use for or with students at this time, or, we are advocating its use for creating an example essay that is wrong, right? Or creating bad code, or so our initial steps in are ways that it can save faculty time while we are looking into the security aspects of it and the FERPA aspects of it.
For me, for attendees that might not know, there's a term called red teaming, which is where security professionals will attempt to think like a hacker, or break an application, or get into a database or what have you. I have actually encouraged my staff, not my students, but my staff, to treat it like a red team tool. I'm like, you know what? Throw it in a sandbox, open up the throttle, and see what you can do with it. Because that's cool, it's exciting, and it's this sort of early days Wild West moment. And these come around every so often, it's cyclical, and then we're in one. So let's have fun with it. For students, I have more taken the approach of, why don't you just play with it a little bit, and don't try to use any of it for academic purposes, because it's not there yet. Just explore it like you would Wikipedia.
All right. So as we move now to the sad part, that is saying goodbye, because this is a conversation that we can keep on talking and talking and talking and talking, you know, and even start talking it in different languages as well, just like ChatGPT provides.
That's right.
I
It
just-
does a fairly good job with translation, so I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Well, I want to thank all of you for participating in our panel discussion, and specifically for saying yes immediately to the invitation. You know, I think that you know shows the collegiality that exists in higher education at the best effort, and the intent of all of us to partner and provide a message to our academic and student audience as well. In our own university community. So thank you very much for joining me today in our first panel. And as you know, we're going to have a second one on March 24th as well. And I invite you all to also access to that. So I hope that you all had have found this conversation informative and insightful. Specifically, that's my message to the audience. And you know, and I want to thank you all, our panelists, for sharing their expertise and perspectives on this topic. And your contribution has been invaluable to this discussion, as it's going to continue and continue. We might be in 1 year talking about another thing, you know.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Probably like that.
You know what? That is the cool thing about it.
It is. It is.
So we keep
So
on
true.
moving and discussing things. And also, I also want to thank our audience for joining us today and engaging the panel in the questions. And you know, it has definitely made the discussion more enriching and great. And I want to express my gratitude specifically to Dr. Linda Murphy for supporting this event and joined as well with my office and bringing everybody together, making this discussion possible. So thank you, everyone. And just a reminder that this is going to be also this is being recorded, and we're going to post it, and it's going to be uploaded in the YouTube channel of the Center for Teaching and Learning with Technology, and that will be very soon as well. So once again, thank you very much.